So today we are dealing a yet very important topic, and that is the corneal ulcers. Frequently we get this problem that how to differentiate between the different ulcers, when it is bacterial, when it is viral, when it is fungal, what are the most prominent features and how to decide the treatment of choice. So alright, we will be starting with first the most common ulcer, and that is the bacterial ulcer. The bacterial corneal ulcer is the most common, as we know. Now, what is the most important cause of this ulcer? As you know, the most important cause of this ulcer is the epithelial erosion. Whenever there is epithelial erosion due to any of the reason, secondary bacterial infection is very commonly occurring, and the most common bacteria is actually the Staph aureus. Staph aureus is most common in the world, but if they ask you in India, then it is actually the Streptococcus pneumoniae. So we have most common in the world, as well as we have most common in India, as well as the most common factor which is actually responsible for the corneal ulcer is the epithelial erosion. Now, because most of the bacteria are not able to invade the intact epithelium, that is why epithelial erosion is actually the most common cause of this secondary bacterial infection. But I will say that some bacteria are much virulent, and those bacteria which are virulent enough, which are aggressive enough, which can invade the intact epithelium, they have the risk of causing corneal ulcers even when there is conjunctivitis. So for example, if I talk about gonococcal conjunctivitis, which is most commonly the purulent conjunctivitis, whenever a patient has this systemic type of gonococcal conjunctivitis, which has systemic features also, like we have urethritis, we have arthritis. In all these cases, there is always a risk of the bacterial infection in the cornea also. There is a risk of corneal involvement also, because it can invade the intact corneal epithelium. Now let us see a list which can invade the intact corneal epithelium. The first important is the Cornybacterium diphtheria. The first important bacteria is the Cornybacterium diphtheria. The second is the Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Neisseria gonorrhoeae. The third important is the Neisseria meningitidis. Neisseria meningitidis. Then the fourth one is the Listeria. And fifth is the H. influenzae. And finally, we have the Shigella. Now, this is again an important MCQ. All those bacteria which can invade the intact corneal epithelium are these. And apart from this, they will always cause corneal ulcer whenever there is epithelial erosion. Alright. Now, because there is lot of vascularization which is present in the bacterial corneal ulcer, a very important complaint of these patients is the pain. In fact, I can say that pain is the most dominant feature as well as most prominent feature of those patients who are having the bacterial corneal ulcer, and both is due to the vascularization, because it is so red, why it is so painful, both of them is occurring due to the vascularization, lot of vascularization leading lot of pain and lot of congestion. Now these bacteria, when they are invading and they are going inside in the different layers of the cornea, as they reach inside, they can also cause the uveitis. Uveitis means iridocyclitis. When the inflammation is going to the deeper layers, there is active ulceration from the superficial layers to the deeper layers. This keratitis, which could have started from conjunctivitis also. So this conjunctivitis, then keratitis is going to the deeper layers also. It is involving the iris and ciliary body. It is causing iridocyclitis, and that is why photophobia. Photophobia is again a very important symptom of these patients, plus the inflammatory cells. Now these inflammatory cells, when they are collected inside the anterior chamber, because of their heaviness, the exudates will always settle at the bottom. Now whenever the exudates are settling at the bottom, what is found? This is called as the hypopion. Hypopion is again a very important feature of the bacterial corneal ulcers. Bacterial corneal ulcers, every bacteria can produce the hypopion, but only some of the bacterial hypopions are most dangerous. What is hypopion? First of all, it is the pus in the anterior chamber. This hypopion is formed due to this uveitis. And third, the most dangerous hypopions. The most dangerous hypopions are produced by two bacteria. One is the pneumococcus, and another is the pseudomonas. So most important and most severe hypopions are produced by two bacteria. One is the pneumococcus, another is the pseudomonas. Now which one to choose from? If both are given and you have to choose only one, then go with the pneumococcus. It is more dangerous in comparison to the pseudomonas. It is so much dangerous. Hypopion is such a prominent feature of this pneumococcus that this hypopion ulcer is also called as hypopion corneal ulcer. This ulcer is also called as hypopion corneal ulcer. The name has been given as hypopion corneal ulcer because hypopion is a prominent feature of these ulcers. It does not mean that hypopion is produced by only this. Every bacteria, as I told you before also, every bacteria can produce hypopion, but the other ones will be called as corneal ulcer with hypopion. They will be called as corneal ulcer with hypopion, while only pneumococcus one is called as the hypopion corneal ulcer. Second important thing, this ulcer is also called as ulcus serpens. It is also called as ulcus serpens. Ulcus means ulcer. Serpens. Serpens means snake-like. Ulcus serpens. So if you are using two important words, when I am saying hypopion corneal ulcer, that means I am talking about pneumococcus. When I am talking about the ulcus serpens, that means also that I am talking about the pneumococcus. Now, what are the two important features of the hypopions? Whenever we have the bacterial hypopions, you have to always remember that these hypopions are always sterile. They are always sterile as well as they are always mobile. Now why it is so? Why these bacterial hypopions are always sterile and they are always mobile? They are sterile because bacteria does not have the hyphae. Bacteria does not have hyphae. They do not have the finger-like projections which can actually penetrate inside the exudate. So one very important feature is that bacterial hypopions are always sterile. Second important thing, they are always mobile. They are mobile because they are not creamy, like we are getting this in cases of fungal corneal ulcers. So whenever the patient moves, the hypopion will also move. Now because bacterial hypopions are always sterile, they do not need the aspiration. Why it is important? Because we do not require to do aspiration in cases of the bacterial corneal ulcers having the hypopions, because these hypopions are always sterile. So we have noticed the epithelial erosion, we have noticed the important causes of the bacterial corneal ulcer, the important bacteria which can penetrate the intact corneal epithelium, important symptom, the pain, and the important sign was photophobia. Why you were getting the photophobia, why you were getting the uveitis, why pain is such important because of the vascularization, and because of the absence of the hyphae, we get just the single ulcer which is painful, which is always sterile. Now if you compare these features with another ulcer, that is the fungal corneal ulcer. The important features of the fungal corneal ulcer, on the other hand, this ulcer is very, very dry looking. This ulcer is very dry looking. It is grayish in color and having the elevated margins. Also having the elevated margins. The ulcer which is dry looking, grayish in color with elevated margins, All these are the properties of the fungal corneal ulcer. These are the properties of the fungal corneal ulcer, and this is all taking place due to the absence of vascularization. Due to the absence of the vascularization. Now, while pain, photophobia, congestion, all but the important features of the bacterial corneal ulcer, they were taking place due to vascularization. On the other hand, dry looking, grayish in color, elevated margins, these are actually features of the fungal corneal ulcers where you do not have vascularization. Vascularization is conspicuously absent there, and that is why we always say that in fungal corneal ulcer, signs are always more than the symptoms. The signs are always more than the symptoms in cases of the fungal corneal ulcer, because for symptoms you require vascularization. All right. Now, what are the other important things? Can you see this single big ulcer along with multiple small ulcers? These multiple small ulcers are actually the satellite lesions. So, another important thing that you get here is the satellite lesions. Satellite lesions we are getting in cases of the fungal corneal ulcer due to the hyphae, finger-like projections. Wherever these hyphae will go, will create a small lesion, that is a satellite lesion. Now, because these hyphae can penetrate the hypopyon, they can penetrate the exudates. So, the hypopyon that you are getting in cases of fungal corneal ulcers, these hypopyons are non-sterile. They are not sterile, they are non-sterile, and also they are non-mobile. Non-sterile and non-mobile hypopyons are actually present in cases of fungal corneal ulcer, which is very different from the bacterial corneal ulcer. Now, bacterial corneal ulcer is always painful. You will get a large ulcer there. You will get a hypopyon which is always sterile and always mobile. On the other hand, a very contrast is the fungal corneal ulcer, where we have absence of vascularization. It is dry looking, it is grayish with elevated margins. We have multiple satellite lesions also, and this hypopyon is always non-sterile and the non-mobile. Now, the other important thing that you get in this kind of ulcer is, see, this is also fungal corneal ulcer showing a big ulcer along with the multiple satellite lesions, is the feathery margins. Feathery margins are even more prominent in this visual, a very, very important differentiating feature from the bacterial corneal ulcer is this one. These are called as the feathery margins. These are feathery margins. So, ulcer which is dry looking, where signs are more, which is grayish, which is elevated, pain is usually not the symptom here, signs are more than the symptoms, usually it is asymptomatic, and if you are able to see the feathery margins also, again the diagnosis goes in favor of the fungal corneal ulcer. Alright, now what are the most important causes? Like if I talk about the bacterial corneal ulcer, I told you that it was actually the epithelial erosion due to any of the cause. Similarly, if I am talking about the fungal corneal ulcer, then what are the important causes of this fungal corneal ulcers? The important causes of the fungal corneal ulcer is the trauma due to the vegetative matter. Whenever there is trauma from the vegetative matter can be plants or it can be the animals. Whenever it is the trauma from the live material, it can be a root, it can be a stem, it can be a leaf, it can be animal tail. Then we think about the fungal corneal ulcer. Then it is more common in the rural population. If I say a farmer by occupation coming from the rural area, or if I say trauma from a vegetative matter, or if there is injudicious use. Whenever there is injudicious use of certain drugs which consists of the antibiotics, you are disturbing the balance between the ocular flora and the outside environment, or we are using the steroids injudiciously, then also there are more chances of the fungal corneal ulcer. So now you are sure when it is a bacterial corneal ulcer and when it is a fungal corneal ulcer. Now if I talk about the complications, complications are more common in cases of bacterial corneal ulcer because there you have vascularization and we require vascularization for the complications. Now let us see what can be the complications due to the bacterial corneal ulcer. The complication depends upon the size of the ulcer. Now if it is a small ulcer, and it is causing a small perforation. Or I can say that whenever perforation is small in a bacterial corneal ulcer, the complication that arises is called as the adherent leukoma. Then it is called as the adherent leukoma. Now what is the meaning of this adherent leukoma? Adherent means adhesion. This adhesion which is causing a leuco means whitish, and oma means the corneal opacity. A white corneal opacity which is occurring due to the adhesion of the iris. Whenever there is a small perforation, the iris will come, it will seal the corneal perforation and will result in a whitish corneal opacity. That is why if I ask you the sequelae of small perforation, then the answer will be the adherent leukoma. While if it is a large perforation, then what will happen? On the other hand, if we have got the large perforation of the cornea, what will happen? Whole of the iris lens diaphragm, that will be prolapsed out. So it will bunged out, it will be protruded out. Now when it is coming out, what will have? It will form a false cornea. Over this false cornea, a line of fibrosis will take place, and fibrosis will form a pseudocornea. So two lines actually are formed which is forming the cornea, but actually it is not cornea because that has gone into perforation, and because the tissue which is present behind the cornea is inflamed, so that inflamed corneal tissue which has protruded out is forming a pseudomembrane, that is a false cornea. Now whenever we have inflammation, fibrosis will take place. So that second line that is forming due to fibrosis, that is the pseudocornea. Now when I am saying that it is a false cornea, it is a pseudocornea, that means it is not containing the true layers. Now because it is not truly the cornea, after some time whole of the tissue is coming out because aqueous humor is making it protruded. It is pushing it anteriorly and it gives a bunch of grapes appearance. Because it is giving a bunch of grapes appearance, that is why this is also called as the anterior staphyloma. Therefore, it is also called as anterior staphyloma. Staphylo means bunch of grapes appearance. This is called as anterior staphyloma. So very important two questions. The sequelae of small perforation is the adherent leukoma, while the sequelae of the large perforation is anterior staphyloma. Now talking about the treatment. What will be the treatment? Treatment, if I am talking about the bacterial corneal ulcer, in the bacterial corneal ulcer, I have to basically give the antibiotics. Mainly we give the topical antibiotics. Now you have to be very clear here. Mainly we give these topical antibiotics in the eye drop form as well as the eye ointment form. Ointments are required for HS use. HS means the night time, because one very important mistake that we do is that we are giving 100% coverage of the antibiotics in the day and we are not giving in the nights. That is giving you a lag period of 12 hours. That is giving a lag period for the bacteria to work. That is why it's very important that you give the coverage for whole of the 24 hours in the day also and in the night also sometimes, but we have to use the systemic antibiotics. Now systemic antibiotics we have to give only for the purulent bacteria. For example, if it's a gonococcal, if it is caused by the gonococcal bacteria, then yes, we have to give the systemic coverage also. Otherwise only the topical coverage will do. Now another important thing, which antibiotics you have to give. You have to give the fortified antibiotics. What is the meaning of fortified? We are actually increasing the concentration of these antibiotics by fortifying them. We have to give them whole of the gram positive as well as gram negative aerobic, anaerobic coverage. Now along with the antibiotics, what else you have to give? You have to give the atropine. Atropine is again an important component of the corneal involvement. It is not only for the bacterial corneal ulcers but also for any type of corneal ulcer. Whenever there is corneal involvement, you should give atropine. What is atropine? It is a mydriatic and a cycloplegic. Now when I am giving a mydriatic and cycloplegic, I am dilating the pupil, I am giving relaxation to the iris muscles, so I am relieving the ciliary muscle spasm, I am relieving the pain, I am relieving the photophobia. Similarly, when I am giving a cycloplegic, I am directly paralyzing the ciliary muscle, and again I am giving rest to the muscles, I am relieving the pain. That is why whether or not patient is feeling pain, whether or not the patient is having photophobia, it's important to give atropine for the corneal usage. Meaning to say that in cases of bacterial corneal ulcer, we give mydriatics and cycloplegics, but for the fungal also you should give atropine, because patient may not be having pain but spasm is always there whenever there is a corneal ulcer. So we will give antibiotics, we will give atropine. I can also introduce the antacids for the systemic pain if any. I can also give vitamin C. Now why vitamin C? In order to improve the wound healing, because whenever there is a corneal ulcer, especially whenever there is a bacterial corneal ulcer, it will go into the deeper layers, it is affecting the stroma, that is the connective tissue, and vitamin C is one thing that is helping in the repairing of this stroma, in the wound healing. So vitamin C has to be given in wound healing. This is the important treatment regimen for the bacterial corneal ulcer. Now if I talk about the fungal corneal ulcer, fungal corneal ulcers were not having pain, they were not having congestion, they were grayish, but I told you that you have to give here also atropine, that is a regular part of the corneal involvement. But instead of the antibiotics, what will you give here? Instead of antibiotics, here I will give the antifungals. Now because there is one fungus which is specifically more common in comparison to the other, and that is your filamentous fungus. Mainly it is caused by the filamentous fungus. Filamentous fungus maybe we have got most commonly, that is the aspergillus. Now as I know that the most common fungus which is responsible for causing this fungal corneal ulcer is the aspergillus, that is why antifungal, which is the treatment of choice, is the netamycin. Netamycin or the Netamet, that is the treatment of choice whenever we have got the fungal corneal ulcer by the filamentous fungus. But if you are having the yeast-like fungus, in cases of the yeast-like fungus, in the yeast-like we can have like Candida, we can have Cryptococcus. There we have the treatment of choice, that is nystatin. We have the treatment of choice, that is nystatin, along with the amphotericin B. So a very clear cut contrast is there between the bacterial corneal ulcer and the fungal corneal ulcer. Now try looking the other one. If you see the other corneal ulcer, which is important and to differentiate, the next important ulcer is the viral corneal ulcer. The next important corneal ulcer is the viral corneal ulcer. Now viral corneal ulcers means two important things. Whenever they say viral corneal ulcer, you have to see two things. One is the KPs, that is the keratic precipitates, and second is the decreased corneal sensations. Whenever we have the viral corneal ulcers, two important things that will take place. One is the keratic precipitates and second is the decreased corneal sensations. Now the two important virus which causes the ulcer, one is the herpes simplex and another is the herpes zoster. Herpes simplex and the herpes zoster. both of them always remain dormant in the ganglions, and that is why basically they are causing the decreased corneal sensations, and that is why they are also notorious for causing the recurrent lesions. In cases of the viral corneal ulcers, there can be recurrent lesions because these viruses are remaining dormant inside the ganglion, and whenever the time comes, whenever the opportunity comes, they become active, they get reactivated, and the recurrent lesions can occur. Now, first of all, if I talk about the herpes simplex will first start with the very superficial lesions. This superficial lesions is called as superficial punctate keratitis. We have got superficial lesions, they are punctate, which are present discretely, they are not diffuse, and they are looking greenish because we have used the fluorescein staining. Whenever we are using the fluorescein staining, the lesions will look greenish in color when you see through the cobalt blue filter. Now what else? Apart from this superficial punctate keratitis, you will also get what you called as the dendritic lesion. Very typical of the herpes simplex. Very typical of the herpes simplex is the dendritic ulcer. This is rather diagnostic or pathognomic of the herpes ulcers, the dendritic ulcers, where you have got tree-like arborizing pattern along with the knobs. Now, knobs are very important. These knobs are very important because they are absent in cases of the pseudodendrites. When I say that this ulcer is not having the true dendrites, it is pseudodendritic, that means knobs are actually absent. This is very diagnostic of a dendritic ulcer which will have the tree-like arborizing pattern along with the knobs, which is a hallmark feature of the herpes simplex. Now, if you see the staining of this ulcer, staining of the floor will be stained by the fluorescein staining. It is by the fluorescein staining, while if you see the knobs are using the rose Bengal staining. They are using the rose Bengal staining. So the two stains are important. What is the difference between true dendritic and a pseudodendritic? And the dendritic is very typical of the herpes simplex. Another important thing is the treatment. You have to give here 3% acyclovir 3% acyclovir eye ointment 5 times a day. Now, what you should not give here, that is again very important. The steroids are contraindicated. Steroids are contraindicated because if you are giving steroids in the dendritic phase, it can actually lead to enhancement. See, this is also a dendritic ulcer. Again, tree-like arborizing pattern along with the knobs. Now, if you are giving steroids in this stage, it can actually lead to the hastening of a large ulcer. It can form a large ulcer. This large ulcer is called as the geographic ulcer. This is also called as geographic ulcer, or it is also called as the amoeboid ulcer. So, whenever you are giving the steroids in any patient of the corneal ulcers and next time he is coming with a larger ulcer, that means you have given steroids in the dendritic ulcer of the herpes simplex, where they are strictly contraindicated. It can hasten the formation, it can hasten the merging or the collagen of the different knobs, and that can lead to a larger ulcer, that is geographic ulcer or the amoeboid ulcer. Now, see this next one. This is very typical of the herpes zoster ophthalmicus. The next viral corneal ulcer, which is caused by the herpes zoster. Herpes zoster is caused by the varicella zoster virus. It is caused by varicella zoster virus, which also causes chickenpox, which gives a lifelong immunity. Now, a person who has developed the chickenpox by this virus will be having a lifelong immunity against the chickenpox. but this person can develop the herpes zoster ophthalmicus. Now, where are very typical important features of this herpes zoster ophthalmicus? One, you can see very clearly that there is strict distribution on one side of the forehead, because on one side only all the three divisions of the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve are involved. The three divisions of trigeminal nerve, do you remember? The ophthalmic, maxillary and mandibular. Now, in the ophthalmic division, we again have three divisions. Go up. This is frontal, then lacrimal and nasociliary. Now, because all the three divisions are involved on one side, so this portion will be having all of the signs and symptoms. This is normal. So, this is called as strict distribution on one side of the forehead. Then the second important thing, the frontal is involved first, then is the lacrimal and then is the nasociliary. Now, because frontal is involved first, that is why first you will have skin eruptions here. Then second is the lacrimal. So, you will have the lesion inside the eye. And third is the nasociliary. So, the tip of the nose and the side of the nose, that is the cheek area, whenever this area is involved, that means the lacrimal division is already involved. That means ophthalmicus has already occurred. So, this is now called as the Hutchison rule. This is called as the Hutchison rule. Hutchison rule says that whenever tip or the side of the nose is showing you eruptions, that means ocular complications will definitely develop, and most of the times this holds true. Though it is not foolproof, but most of the time it holds good, and we as an ophthalmologist are using this rule to decide when to start the treatment. I will start the treatment as soon as I see the involvement of the tip or the side of the nose, because I know lacrimal division is involved earlier than the nasociliary portion. Now, how this is different from the herpes simplex? First of all, this is more severe. This is more severe. This virus is more virulent. Plus, you have the systemic features also. So, here you have systemic involvement also. It is more severe also. It is very painful also. And it is involving all the three divisions. All right. Now, another important thing is the typical feature of herpes zoster. While the typical feature of the herpes simplex was the dendritic ulcer, the typical one found in herpes zoster is the nummular keratitis. Nummular keratitis is actually the stromal keratitis, while the dendritic keratitis was the epithelial keratitis. Always remember, the dendritic keratitis is the epithelial keratitis. This nummular keratitis, which is typical of herpes zoster, is the stromal keratitis, where you are getting these coin-like areas. Can you see? We are getting the disc-like areas. It is stromal keratitis, which is also called as disciform keratitis. So, in the stromal keratitis, we are getting coin-shaped areas, we are getting disc-shaped areas found in the stroma, along with the stromal haziness. These areas are surrounded by stromal haziness. This nummular keratitis is typical of the herpes zoster. Now, another important question that I get frequently is where you get dendritic and where you get pseudodendritic, and where you get the pseudodendritic. Or sometimes they will ask me that are dendritic pattern found in other places also? No. Dendritic pattern is very typical of the herpes simplex. We do not get dendritic pattern any other place. If you are getting this dendritic pattern in the herpes zoster, then it is pseudodendritic. Pseudodendritic means no knobs, and this no knobs are present in the herpes zoster. So, now I think it's very clear when you have dendritic and when you have pseudodendritic pattern. All right. Finally, we come to the fourth ulcer, and this is your acanthamoeba. Acanthamoeba. Corneal ulcer. This acanthamoeba corneal ulcer is caused by this acanthamoeba, and acanthamoeba is a free living amoeba. It is a free living amoeba which is present in the soil. Now next question is that when it is present in the soil, it does not require men to complete its life cycle. How it is actually entering men? A very important thing is the contact lenses. So ulcer, which is very frequently associated with the contact lens use, is this acanthamoeba corneal ulcer. Whenever you are using the contaminated solution to wash these contact lenses, or we are using the tap water, soiled water, the expired solutions, then every time we are heading towards the risk of acanthamoeba corneal ulcer, the free living amoeba present in soil. Now, one very important confusion which remains is that what is the most common infection in the contact lens users? The most common infection in the contact lens users. The most common infection that you are getting in the contact lens users is not acanthamoeba. It is not acanthamoeba. This is actually the Pseudomonas. This is the Pseudomonas, and then it is followed by the acanthamoeba. Then it is followed by the acanthamoeba. That is why if they say the most common infection in the contact lens user, go with the Pseudomonas. But if I say what is the most common risk of corneal ulcer in cases of acanthamoeba, then the answer is the use of contact lenses. So that is the most common way by which a person gets infection in cases of acanthamoeba keratitis. But per se, the most common infection which is occurring in the acanthamoeba corneal ulcer is actually the Pseudomonas. Now, how it is actually causing the ulcer? This ulcer manages to remain between the cornea and the contact lens. Now, because it is managing to remain between the cornea and the contact lens, it is actually involving whole of the cornea, and that is why a very typical feature here is the ring abscess. Here, that is why we are getting a ring abscess. So can you see the appearance was very different in bacterial ulcer, then the fungal ulcer, then dendritic pattern, then the pseudodendritic pattern, along with the nummular keratitis in the viral corneal ulcer. And this is the fourth one, the acanthamoeba corneal ulcer, the free living amoeba present in the soil, remaining in between the corneal surface and the contact lenses, and then whole of the ulcer is occurring. Ring-shaped ulcer, the ring abscess, we have used the fluorescein staining, that is why you are getting whole of the ulcer, and it's a very painful ulcer. Here pain is out of proportion. Pain is out of proportion of the size of the corneal ulcer. Now you were saying the pain was also there in bacterial corneal ulcer. How will you differentiate? First of all, there you will get the hypopionts, there you will not get the history of the contact lens use, there you will not get any ring-shaped abscess, plus there you will get the epithelial erosion. Here you are having a history of the contact lens use, you are having the history of any vegetative matter which was soiled. Here you are having the ring-shaped abscess, plus there the pain was in proportion to the size of the ulcer, and here pain is out of the proportion. So if pain is too much out of the proportion in a normal looking ulcer, then that heads towards the acanthamoeba corneal ulcer. Why? Because of the radial keratoneuritis. Here, because the patients are having the radial keratoneuritis. Neuritis means inflammation of the nerve. Which nerves? Kerato means corneal nerves in a ring radial fashion, because the corneal nerves which are spread in a ring shaped the radial fashion, that is why there is inflammation also in a radial fashion, and this is leading to the radial keratoneuritis, very severe pain in this patient. Now what can be confusing here? Confusing things are so many. The first of all thing is that here also you can get a trauma with the vegetative matter. Here also you can get the history of trauma by the vegetative matter, by which you can actually confuse with the fungal corneal ulcer. Second important thing, here also you can get the pseudo-dendritic pattern. Here also we can get the pseudo-dendritic pattern. That is not true, but no knobs are present here. This will get a confusion with the viral corneal ulcer. Number 3, here also you can see the macrophages. Here also you can see the macrophages, which will confuse you with the bacterial corneal ulcer. Now, how to solve it? Where from you are getting the macrophages here? They are not the true macrophages. They are not true. Rather, it is the trophozoites. These are basically the trophozoites, which is the active stage of this acanthamoeba corneal ulcer, which looks like macrophages. They are not the true dendrites. They are pseudo-dendritic. And trauma with vegetative matter is actually taking place only when it is soiled. So that is why these are kept in the DD. Now what can be diagnostic? Diagnostic is the growth on non-nutrient agar, which is enriched with the E. coli. If you are having a growth on the non-nutrient agar which is enriched with the E. coli, then you are sure that you are dealing with a case of the acanthamoeba corneal ulcer, and you have to take the necessary treatment. Now, what is the treatment of choice? The treatment of choice is polyhexamethylene biguanide. That is better. And the second is the propamidine. Sometimes you will also get a combination in the options. If you are getting the combination in the option, go with the combination. If you have to choose one, go with the polyhexamethylene biguanide. Now, how to treat this one when you are having a lot of nummular keratitis, very severe herpes zoster? Here you have to give the systemic along with the ocular, that is topical treatment. In herpes simplex, we only give the topical treatment, but because in the herpes zoster, we have systemic involvement also, so we have to give both systemic along with the topical. So give both systemic along with topical, that is acyclovir. You have to give both, and the tablet is 800 milligram tablet, while the ointment is 3% eye ointment. Both have to be given 5 times a day. What else we can give? Because here we have got lot of itching, lot of pain. Now for pain, we can use the opioids. Use the opioids group of drugs for the pain. For the itching, we will use the antihistaminics. Now because it is a systemic condition where you are having intense trigeminal neuralgia. Lot of trigeminal neuralgia is there, and many a times we have got even the post-herpetic neuralgia. Even when the acute phase is passing, then also patient continues to have pain. The lot of patients goes into depression. Now for this depression, what we can give is the tricyclic antidepressants. Usually we use the amitriptyline. So likewise, because you are having the systemic involvement also, you have to give the systemic treatment also. So I hope this was very informative for you. We have discussed all the 4 corneal ulcers. I have tried to show you the comparative analysis of the 4 corneal ulcers, how they are presenting, what are the important causes, what are the differentiating features, what are the complications, along with the treatment. Thank you.